If you're anything like me, sometimes you need a break from those longer RPGs and open world games, and what's better than a short palate cleanser? I've created a collection of 5 short games for you to dig into, varying in popularity and genre, but all under 5 hours in length. Let's get into it. Somewhat close to my time limit, around 4 hours to beat, Inbento is an extremely cute puzzle game with lovely illustrations, telling its heartfelt story of family and growing up through varied and engaging puzzles based around creating a packed lunch. Puzzles start off really easy to teach mechanics, but grow downright, well, puzzling as it goes on. Accompanying the puzzle is a soundtrack that wonderfully captures the calm and upbeat tone of the game. It's not particularly playable being a puzzle game, but if you leave it a couple of years or so, you can come back to it and get more fun out of it, like I did while recording footage for this video. The game has immaculate vibes, got me using my brain, and was perfect for relaxing at the end of the day. Clocking in at around 1.5 to 2 hours to beat on normal difficulty, Goblins is a brilliant bite-sized boomer shooter with a lot of extra content and replayability to enjoy. This game has been on my 2 playlists for a while, since I'm a fan of David Szymanski's other works, and it's just as good as I expected. Its combat loop is an absolute joy, similar to Szymanski's previous game, Dusk, with punchy weapons, a tight but varied cast of whimsical enemies, and level designs that manage to balance exploration and secrets with intuitive progression, using enemies and items to guide the player to key points. Levels are a short enough length to not grow tedious, but long enough to make your playthrough take a long time if you decide to play on too hard a difficulty. I'm not a fan of completely preventing mid-level saves, but at least you can pause a game. And it does give a nice arcadey feel, like Serious Sam Advance if it didn't hate the player quite as much. I do really wish you could save and quit between levels though. I find the difficulty recommendations to be accurate, with Imp difficulty being comfortably enjoyable, not too easy, not too hard, with only a few deaths. And to my credit, a couple of them were to a bottomless pit. I knew it was going to happen, but you've got to check, right? But Goblin mode? That's a goddamn beast. Levels took a good many attempts to beat. It was here that I really felt the lack of mid-level save. I also felt that it made me get better and quicker at the game very quickly. It took me a few hours to beat on Goblin mode, and I think its short length really helped with the enjoyment of it. And it would also be worth me mentioning that I chose to play Goblin mode on Once Again mode, where you get to keep your weapons and upgrades from your previous playthrough, and I also played with alternate weapons and mirrored levels enabled, which did make it easier, but also allowed me to shake up my experience with new content. And speaking of extra content, there's also bonus remix levels if you want even more to play. They're the same level layout, more or less, with different enemies and weapons, and in a different order. All in all, the game is significantly longer than my 5-hour limit, if you include all available content, but these are, of course, optional, and on top of the main experience, which I highly recommend. A recent game now, as of recording, Slots and Daggers is a gambling roguelike, with a surprising amount up to skill rather than luck. The main challenge you'll face is getting the right timing with the slot, but that's something that can be made easier with practice, and a power-up that slows them by 30%. As you progress through runs, you get currency to spend on improving your next, which carries over and accumulates between runs. I appreciate how it allows the player to reset and redistribute permanent perks, avoiding the problem of players being locked into specific upgrades, and also allowing for challenge runs without any. The pixart on display is full of personality, leaning strongly into a rough, hand-drawn style to convey its dark world and monsters, all of which are visually distinct from one another. The game's music is fun and fitting with the overall tone of the game, although I would have definitely liked a different and more dramatic track for the last dungeon and final boss, since when I beat the final boss, I had no idea it was that until the end text. A little more drama would have gone a long way for its final section. Its gameplay loop of slots-based combat is a clever and fun idea, and building up combos and rerolls for massive damage makes for a very satisfying experience. I don't just mean the satisfaction of numbers going up here, as the game's animations and UI are deeply satisfying and full of energy, in a way I've most compared to Bullet Rose, some of the highest praise I can give. Its sound effects are similarly satisfying and fit the intended vibe perfectly. It's really a ride of dopamine hits, even if gameplay can get pretty repetitive, something that doesn't become too much of a complaint for me because of its relatively short length, taking me just under 5 hours to beat, just within my time limit. The short length of each run encourages replayability, trying out different builds to see what works and what you most enjoy. I got my first win with a poison defense build, but other builds such as skill-based DPS and magic are also valid options. The game cleverly limits how much money you can hold at once in a run, preventing hoarding behaviour and encouraging more dynamic and successful playstyle of using money throughout battles, as well as to purchase upgrades. This gets a player in a nice sweet spot of managing their money to keep earning, while also dealing plenty of damage and healing. I will complain that the game is somewhat lacking in depth with its strategy options, with synergies generally being pretty obvious and a given item being easily obtained in almost any run you do. This predictability makes it easy to make the build you want, making it almost entirely skill-based, but reduces the likelihood of a player organically messing around with whatever happens to randomly show up in a run. That's not to say there's nothing to mess about with, as rerolls and synergies can get pretty mad. So mad that the dev had to change up enemy movesets, allowing some to lock slots and disable symbols in their turn, forcing the player to have backup strategies and multiple damage options. They also made it so enemies have an anger meter that goes up the more you reroll in a single turn, eventually stopping your go with their attack. Except, not always, letting things get kinda ridiculous. I think it's best to just show you. The game also has an optional arena mode, where you face enemy after enemy to try and get a high score in an endless gauntlet. It's a nice extra mode with an array of new enemy types that I really appreciate. I hope there might be more enemy factions than the eggs added in future for those most dedicated players to enjoy, alongside a leaderboard. Your Future Self is a short, experimental text-based narrative adventure where you're trapped in a time loop with yourself from 35 years in the future and have to convince them that they shouldn't have committed an atrocity that would kill thousands, and in doing so, changing the timeline to stop yourself from committing it. It's a heavy story tackling the topics of climate change, climate refugees, and geopolitical conflicts therein, but one I think well worth experiencing, and one that I won't go much into as to avoid spoiling it. The game uses its retro interface and distortions to it to great effect to visually convey emotion and different speakers. The visuals can be a bit much though, and can thankfully be lessened in settings to make it a bit more accessible. I have mixed feelings about this game's soundtrack, but generally think it works and fits the vibe of the game. Mechanically, the time loop is a core part of the experience, increasing your stats at the end of each loop based on what speech checks you succeeded with. RPG speech checks compare characters' stats and give a percentage chance of success, modified by your future self's emotional state and receptiveness to different dialogue choices. These percentages are hidden by default, but can be switched on if you want to eliminate some of the ambiguity. I personally prefer not knowing since it puts you more in the position of a player character. I was slightly disappointed by the lack of different paths and endings, with the story taking a mostly linear route, but also understand why the creators want to have a streamlined and intentional narrative experience. In the just under 2 hours it took to complete, Your Future Self has strongly affected me emotionally and artistically, and it's an experience that I highly recommend. A point-and-click horror game set in the 1960s Taiwan, Detention is a brilliantly atmospheric and stylized game exploring political and spiritual themes. Up front, I do need to give a content warning for this game, with death and inappropriate relations between adult and minor. Warnings aside, I adore Detention, with its unsettling environment and sound design. As an example, how you can hear the laboured breathing and giggling of the lingered stalking the school's corridors far before you see them, making the player feel the threat of their presence at nearly all times, and an intriguing and harrowing story. While one problem I usually have with adventure games is how obtuse their puzzles can be, I found these to be largely intuitive, and or otherwise of thematic importance. I don't think I'll ever forget the experience of figuring out a solution to a puzzle and pleading with myself in the game, please, no, there has to be another way. The short length of under 4 hours and linear nature of the game and choice by the devs to limit map size definitely helps prevent getting lost. I absolutely adore its art style, being a cohesive collage that captures the otherworldly and eerie tone of the game perfectly. Light and colour are used to great effect to set mood, alongside the soundtrack and its droning and screaming tones. Its narrative requires that you properly pay attention and seek to understand the character of the protagonist and narrative themes to fully get it, but it's satisfying and horrifying to piece together. One gripe with this game is how short of a time you can hold your breath for, but I can allow it as an intentional choice to make enemy encounters that bit more difficult and terrifying. Other than that, I love this entire game and plan on checking out Red Candle Games' other games, which have been on my radar for a while, and possibly yours too. I guess subscribe to see me cover those sometime in the next decade. Thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed. If you like it, why not like and comment? Have you played any of these games yourself? Do you have any recommendations? Let me know and I'll see you around.